Hey guys, how's it going? My name is Mike. Today I'm going to be reviewing a sword by Ronan Katana. Ronan Katana is the name of the company, and the sword that I'm going to be looking at today is the Italian hand and a half long sword by Ronan Katana, and I think it's their model number 5. I will put a link down in the description below where I purchased this particular sword and how you can get yours. Put a link right to their website, and yeah, you can get it from there. It is a $275 battle-ready, functional European style or medieval European style longsword. Now, as far as I understand, Ronan Katana is not trying to replicate any specific historical example with this sword. It's basically based on historical examples for the design and the features. So it's inspired. We should say it's inspired by swords. Long swords, which I think date from around the 15th century. At least that's my impression of what they were trying to do here. And as far as what type this blade is and where it falls within the oak shot typology system, I am not sure. Some of you guys who know that system better than me can probably figure that out. And I'm not sure what type they were going after. However, it does definitely look like a 15th century style longsword. Now, Ronan Katana calls this a hand and a half sword. And I know there's some debate as to, whether or not we should classify swords as hand and a half or just simply long sword or arming sword. In my opinion, this is a true hand and a half sword. And the reason why I say that is it is a two-handed grip, as you can see, and I can get two hands very comfortably on the grip, but there's very little space in between those two hands, about a half of a hand's width of space in between the two hands before I have to actually start grabbing the pommel. If I wanted to fit a full hand in between my two hands, I would have to actually grip the pommel. So in my opinion, this is definitely the size of a hand and a half sword. Now the blade is, it's a long sword blade. As I understand it, the difference between long sword and hand and a half long sword is basically all in the hilt and very little to do with the blade. I could have that wrong, but like I said, I'm not an expert. Which brings me on to some information about me real quick. I purchased this sword with my own money. I'm not affiliated with Ronan Katana. And, I'm not an expert in any way. I'm just an enthusiast and a collector. So my goal is to give you guys some information so that if you're interested in buying a product like this, a reproduction or historically inspired reproduction of a functional medieval longsword or any other type of sword product that I review, hopefully you'll have some information and this will help you. Okay, yeah, so I think I mentioned already, if I didn't, this is a $275 sword on Ronan Katana's website. I got mine for $265 because they were running a $10 off sale. So, 10 bucks, whatever, it saves on tax, I guess, or whatever. But yeah, so $265 on sale. At the time of the filming of this video, because I checked this morning, these are apparently out of stock at Ronan Katana. However, having viewed their pages on their page on a regular basis, I notice swords come in and out of stock all the time. So if you like what you see in this video and you want to get this, right now it's out of stock as the filming of this video, but most likely it could be back in stock by the time you guys even see this video. So just a disclaimer that right now you can't get this sword from Ronan Katana because it's out of stock, but it will be in stock again, I assume. Now, You can also get this at Cult of Athena, although I think they just order from Ronan Katana, so theirs will probably be back ordered also, and I'm not sure of the price that they are asking for. But it's a sub $300 functional medieval longsword, and I think for the price that you pay, Ronan Katana has delivered a very nice package here. I have cut with this sword, I have tested it, swung it around, but before we go to the cutting footage and my final analysis of this particular sword, let's take a look at the details of it, starting with the hilt. It's a very basic crossguard here, with some fancy design here in terms of the crossguard rises up here to sort of like a diamond shape. That's pretty stereotypical of a medieval sword. There's nothing really special to say about the crossguard. I mean, I don't think it is the same high carbon steel that the blade is, and we'll talk about the blade in a second. But it's a satin finish, and it is fairly well shaped and proportioned. I'm just gonna hold it like this for a minute. It's rounded here so that there's actually no ledges that bite into you or catch you anywhere, which is very nice. And when holding up towards the crossguard, it is actually quite comfortable. So yeah, I mean, pretty basic crossguard. Like I said, no fancy design or anything on it, but for this particular price, that's kind of what you're gonna get. The gap in the crossguard where the blade enters through, I don't know if you guys can see it. There is definitely a gap. There has to do with the fact that there is a central fuller running up the blade. The gap, it's not particularly well, I don't know, it's not very sightly, it's not the nicest looking gap in the world. However, the crossguard is very tight. It is fairly well fitted in there, and there's no movement in the guard even having after me cutting with it. And I think it's generally acceptable for this particular price range. So, this would be considered a budget sword, probably medium budget sword, or, I would consider a budget sword anything less than like $500, right? That's my opinion. You guys might have a different opinion of that. But for the money, I feel like this crossguard is acceptable and fairly nice. Now, the grip, I haven't taken it apart, and I haven't seen anybody take this apart. As far as I know, this is a wood core grip over the tang, and then this is, I don't know if this is actual cord wrapped in leather, or if that's the shape of the wood underneath and then it's wrapped in leather. I'm not really sure. Whatever it is underneath there, it does not move, and it is a very comfortable grip. You can see there's this central riser here where you can put one hand up above and one below, and it is quite comfortable. It is stitched together with a seam that you can see right there. This seam does protrude pretty significantly, but that being said, when you grip the sword and you swing it around and whatnot, you don't feel that, at least I don't feel that seam at all, and it does not really affect the comfortable nature of the hand grip itself. I would say that it is more rounded than I think it needs to be. I would say one criticism of this particular grip is that if it were slightly more rectangular or have like sharper lines, it would be a little bit easier to index the sword and try to get proper edge alignment. But I mean, as it is, it's actually not that bad, and it's very comfortable, and it looks cool, and it's very serviceable. The leather, it doesn't feel like it's particularly high grade leather. I know I'm saying particularly a lot, I'm sorry. One of my favorite words, I guess. It doesn't feel like it's super high grade leather, but it doesn't feel cheap either. Probably some sort of mid grade material, and yeah, it's a very comfortable grip. I have to admit, I found when I initially got the sword, I thought that the grip was going to be uncomfortable just by these ridges and just the shape and whatnot, but it is actually very comfortable. Moving on to the pommel, you have this fancy fishtail pommel here. I think this is why they classify this as, quote, an Italian hand and a half sword and not just a hand and a half sword. Maybe because they think this is fancy and Italian, I don't know. But it is a really nice pommel. It is pretty comfortable to grab. There's no sharp ledges or anything in here that hurt if you are grabbing the pommel. And I believe the construction is a peened construction. Now, on my particular sword, oh, there's that word again, particular, sorry. On my sword, you can't see where the peen is. And I know someone who has a sword that from Ronan Katana, not this same sword, but a sword that uses this same pommel from one of their other European swords. And you can see a peen mark on his. On mine, you can't really see any peen mark at all, although the website lists this sort of having a peen construction, and I have no doubt to believe that it isn't peened. It's just, you can't really see it. They blended it in extremely well, however they did it. But yeah, that is the hilt. And overall, I think it's a really nice hilt. For the money, can't really complain all that much. It's pretty serviceable. Now, moving on to the blade. This is, I believe, a 1075 through hardened steel blade. And, you know, it is pretty rigid and it's definitely tempered. It is, I believe, a spring steel. And it's a nice blade. It came sharpened by Ronan Katana, and I would say it definitely is sharp, but not super sharp, or even very, very sharp. It's like moderately sharp, and I think it's really hard to tell. It could have a micro bevel. If it does, it's very hard to see. Otherwise, it could just be a single bevel right from the center of the blade down to the edges. But it may have a micro bevel. I don't know. Like I said, it's really hard to see. But it is a nice shape, and the great thing that Ronan Katana did is they did some really nice distal taper on this blade. I don't know about the exact distal taper measurements, but it is definitely tapered, and it's done very, very nicely. So much so that it adds very nicely to the maneuverability of the sword itself. So it very nicely done in terms of distal taper and what they call profile taper. The fuller runs all the way up about 3/4 of the blade, and then the last quarter, the cutting portion, this area, the cutting portion of the blade is basically a simple diamond cross section. So yeah, I mean, overall initial impressions of this sword is, you know, it's very nice. It's not very heavy. I wouldn't say it is light, but it's definitely not a heavy sword. And its point of balance is right about there, if you guys can see. So pretty close to the crossguard, but I wouldn't say that it is, yeah, it's very nicely balanced. It's one of the things I noticed about this sword right when I got it is its balance and its handling, and it handles great, I do have to say. Before I move on to the cutting portion of this review, I do want to show you guys that it does come with a fully functional scabbard that is wood. It's a wood core scabbard wrapped in leather. It's a very simple scabbard. There's nothing fancy about it, but the fact that it does come with one and it's a sub $300 sword is actually quite impressive. And the quality is, you know, it's a very serviceable, nice scabbard. It has a chape, and it does come with this stuff, this apparatus here for mounting it to your belt or your waist. But it did also come with some other leather straps, which is part of the mounting system. I don't ever really take the time to kind of figure that stuff out because I never wear the sword, but you can wear it with the stuff that comes with the sword, which is also a big plus. And the sword itself fits very nicely in the scabbard. And the best thing is, there is practically, you know, I think you can hear it. It's like a very, very, very small rattle. The sword fits very nicely in the scabbard. And I know that's a big deal to some people. For me, it's not that big of a deal, but my model here has a very nice fitting scabbard. And if you hold it upside down, well, I thought the sword was going to come out, but it doesn't come out. So it fits very, very nice. And it's a nice addition to an overall package that Ronan Katana offers. And it draws very nicely and easily. Excuse me for 1 second. So before actually cutting with the sword, you know, when I handled it, I was very impressed for this kind of money. I have some swords that are more expensive than this, and they feel about the same in terms of handling and even in terms of fit and finish. I think, you know, it's definitely not perfect. There's some scuff marks and things that it came with. And the one thing that kind of irritated me a little bit is that there is a little bit of edge damage. It's very, very slight, but it's right around this portion of the blade, nowhere near the cutting portion, which is great. But there's a little bit of edge damage over here. It's like some little bit of nicks, and I'm not sure if that happened in the production process or like some mishandling, but it's worth noting that it did come like that. So, you know, quality control on a sub $300 sword is probably going to be a little spotty, but overall I think Ronan Katana nailed this design, and I'm very, very pleased with the way it looks right now, and definitely pleased with the way it feels and handles. Now let's switch to some cutting footage, and then I'll give you guys my final opinion of this sword after getting out there and actually using it. All right. Pretty good. These bottles here, these like thicker soda bottles, are much tougher to cut if you don't have a really sharp edge. And there was some tearing right there, but for the most part it went through just fine. Okay guys, I'm not an expert by any means, but you can see that it does make really nice clean cuts of tatami. Here's a nice one. So, pretty good. Okay, now that you guys have seen the cutting footage and some of the things that I actually did with the sword, I'll give you my opinion of what I think in terms of how it handles and how it cuts and performs. One thing to note right off the bat, I don't have the best form. I'm not a student of HEMA. I just, like I said, I'm an enthusiast. I do the best I can from what I know. And, you know, I think it's important that if the sword is fairly well designed and a good weapon, that if you give it to someone, they should be able to at least cut something with it if it's decent. And in this case, this sword is more than decent. As you see, it cuts through tatami pretty easily. I think it would do better if the edge was a little bit sharper, and obviously if my form was better. But I am gonna work on this edge a little bit and see if I can actually get it sharper and hone it a little bit more to make it go through tatami easier. But it does cut through tatami. I had a couple of bad cuts, actually a bunch of bad cuts, where my edge alignment was off, and because of that, it wasn't very forgiving going through the tatami, and it sent a lot of shock down the sword, down into the hilt. But you know, the cross guard is actually still tight. You know, everything is, you know, tight. The only one thing I actually noticed, and it is minor, but I do think I should mention it, is that the tang down here by the pommel, you can feel shifts ever so slightly. It is a very, very slight minor movement, but it is there. You can feel it, and you can't hear it, and you guys won't be able to see it, but trust me, it's there. There's a little bit of movement. At first I thought it was the pommel loosening up, and that scared me right off the bat, but then I realized it's not the pommel. The pommel is actually very tight. The cross guard is still very tight. Everything is tight. The only thing is that you can move the tang. It's very, very slight, but you can feel it. So it's shifting a little bit down in this area, and I think it has more to do with the quality of this construction of the grip and how tightly it fits the tang, and that's probably why you can move it a little bit. But it's really not a deal breaker, and it's not really that big of a deal. If you plan on doing abusive testing with this sword or abusive cutting, that might be an issue for you, and I don't recommend doing that. But for regular backyard cutting, I think it's, you know, backyard cutting and training, it's definitely fine. So cutting water bottles, as you guys could see from the footage, this thing is a water bottle beast. It will cut through most water bottles that you have very, very easily with minimal effort. Even with poor form, you can get right through them. Even the thicker soda bottles that are less forgiving, if you have poor edge alignment, this thing went right through, no problem. So with the edge that it has on it, that it came from Ronan Katana, it's pretty good. It will cut, and if you have really good edge alignment, it cuts very well. You know, so like I said, it just needs a little bit more of a honed edge, and I think it will be even better. In terms of handling, it's fantastic. It feels great. You don't feel uncomfortable using this sword at all. It is a long sword, and that bears noting because I'm short, and this is a long blade for a guy like me. So, you know, I'm not as comfortable using this as I would be, say, like an arming sword, or maybe a long sword with a little bit of a longer grip and a shorter blade, or, you know, some type of saber or something else. So I'm not that comfortable with it, but that has less to do, I think, with the sword and more to do with my size and my form. It is a really nice sword, guys. And for the money, I don't think you can actually get much better. I mean, if you guys know of any other sub $300 swords that perform this well and feel this good and are built with this type of quality, yeah, let me know down in the comments below. But I actually think it's definitely worth it. It's definitely a good option if you guys are looking. You know, if you want to spend a few more $100, yeah, you can get something nicer. But for sub 300, I think this is the way to go. I was pretty impressed, and I do recommend it. Yeah, so that's it. I'll put a link in the description below where you can get it. And yeah, leave some comments if you'd like. Subscribe if you want to see future review videos, if you have any suggestions. And yeah, that's it, guys. Thanks for watching, and hope you liked the video, and have a good day.